The crystal chandelier exploded first. 1,000 pieces of light turned to shrapnel. The restaurant Obsidian was the kind of place where reservations took 3 months and silence cost extra. Now it was screaming. Tables flipped. Champagne glasses shattered against marble. A waiter hit the floor so hard his tray skipped across the room like a stone on water. The window behind booth 4 turned to powder, and the night air rushed in carrying gunfire with it. Everyone dropped. The couple at table 7 threw themselves under the tablecloth. The sommelier scrambled behind the bar. The chef in the open kitchen ducked so fast, his hat fell into a pan of burning butter. Kendra Butler didn't move. She sat in the red silk dress that had taken her 20 minutes to choose that morning, her wine glass halfway to her lips, and looked at the 3 masked men pouring through the broken window the way you look at a flight delay. Annoyed, but unsurprised. No scream, no gasp, no flinch, just a slow exhale, and the soft clink of her glass touching the table. "You picked the wrong restaurant," she said, her voice so steady it cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. "And the wrong booth." Across from her, a man in a charcoal suit froze mid-movement. Bong Moon had been reaching for a weapon that wasn't there because men like him didn't bring guns to blind dates, and now his hand hovered in the air between them, caught in the physics of disbelief. He wasn't frozen because of the assassins crashing through the window. He wasn't frozen because of the automatic rifles or the black masks or the way the lead gunman was already swinging his weapon toward their table. He was frozen because he was looking at Kendra, at the way her shoulders hadn't climbed toward her ears, at the way her breathing stayed even while the rest of the room had stopped breathing entirely, at the way she sat in that blood-red dress like violence was weather, something that passed through and didn't stay. And then she reached for her wine glass again. Moon's brain, the same brain that had built an empire on reading danger and calculating threats and staying 3 moves ahead of every enemy in the city, couldn't process what he was seeing. This was supposed to be a normal date. Awkward small talk, nervous laughter, maybe a goodnight kiss if he played his cards right. He'd left his men in the parking garage. He'd unbuttoned his collar. He'd tried to be charming. The woman across from him lifted her wine, took a sip, and set it down with the calm precision of someone finishing a thought. That's when he saw it. The movement was slight, just the rotation of her wrist as she placed the glass on the white tablecloth. But the candlelight caught it, a flash of black ink against her glowing skin, geometric and unmistakable, a snowflake. Not decorative, not aesthetic, a mark, the mark. Moon's hand stopped reaching for the gun that wasn't there and started reaching for the edge of the table because the floor had just dropped out from under him. The gunman was shouting something. Moon couldn't hear it. The room had compressed to a single point, the woman in the red dress and the tattoo on her wrist that belonged to ghosts, to legends, to the people his father had whispered about in the dark when he thought Moon was asleep, the silencers. The lead gunman fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Someone screamed. Kendra turned her head toward the noise. Not fast, not startled, just turning. The way you turn toward a conversation you weren't part of but just became interesting. "Stay down!" the gunman shouted, his rifle sweeping the room. "Nobody moves, nobody dies." Moon finally found his voice. It came out hoarse, disbelieving. "Kendra." She looked back at him. Her eyes were calm. Terrifyingly calm. The kind of calm that doesn't come from being brave or reckless. It comes from having already run the math on how many ways this ends and deciding which one she prefers. "It's fine," she said, like he'd asked about the wine. "It's not fine," Moon hissed, his instincts finally catching up to his body. He started to move, to pull her down, to flip the table, to do something because this was his world, and in his world when guns came out you moved fast, or you died slow. But Kendra was already moving. Not scrambling, not panicking. Moving. Her left hand stayed on the wine glass. Her right hand, the one with the tattoo, slid beneath the table. Moon saw the shift in her posture, the way her spine straightened and her weight redistributed, and suddenly the woman across from him wasn't a logistics manager on a blind date. She was something else. something that had been sitting very still and was now deciding not to. The table flipped, not by Moon, by Kendra. One motion, smooth, efficient. The mahogany surface rotated up and toward the gunman, and Moon found himself on the floor behind it before his brain registered that she'd pulled him there. Her hand was on his chest, pressing him flat, and her body was angled toward the gunfire like a shield that had decided to think. Bullets punched through the wood above their heads. Splinters exploded. The sound was deafening. Kendra didn't blink. Moon stared at her. At the woman who had spent the last 45 minutes laughing nervously at his jokes and asking safe questions about his import business and apologizing for being rusty at dating. That woman was gone. The woman crouched beside him now had the expression of someone running diagnostics. "Who are you?" Moon whispered. She didn't answer. She was counting. He could see it in her eyes, counting shots, counting footsteps, counting seconds. The gunfire stopped. Reload. Kendra moved again. She was up and over the table before Moon could process it, before he could grab her, before he could shout "don't." She moved like water, like gravity, like something that had been held back and finally released. Her red dress caught the candlelight as she closed the distance to the nearest gunman. Moon heard the impact, saw the rifle clatter to the floor, saw the man crumple. He didn't see how. By the time he pulled himself up, Kendra was back behind the table, breathing steady. Her dress was torn at the thigh, blood on her shoulder that didn't seem to bother her. She picked up her wine glass. It hadn't spilled. She took another sip. Moon stared. The two remaining gunmen were retreating, shouting into radios, scrambling back through the shattered window. Sirens wailed in the distance. The other patrons were still on the floor, sobbing, praying, calling loved ones, and Kendra Butler sat in the ruins of their date, in her blood-red dress, and looked at him with eyes that had seen this before. Moon's voice came out barely above a whisper. "I know that, Mark." Kendra's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. A door closing, a lock turning. "No," she said quietly. "You don't." But he did. His father had died afraid of that mark, had warned him about the people who carried it, had told him stories that Moon had thought were exaggerations, myths designed to keep soldiers in line and rivals terrified. The silencers don't miss. The silencers don't stop. And if you see the snowflake, you're already dead. Moon looked at the woman across from him, at the tattoo on her wrist, at the calm in her eyes. "Who?" he said slowly, his voice shaking for the first time in a decade. "Are you really?" Kendra set down her glass, folded her hands, looked at him the way she'd looked at the gunman. Steady, certain, final. "I'm the woman who showed up for a blind date," she said. "And I really hoped it wouldn't go like this." Outside, the sirens were getting closer. Inside, the chef was crying. The sommelier was on the phone with the police. The couple from table 7 was still under the tablecloth. Moon couldn't look away from her. "We need to leave," Kendra said. "Not a suggestion, a fact." "Why?" "Because in about 90 seconds, this place will be crawling with cops. And in about 3 minutes, whoever sent those men will send more." She stood, smoothed her dress. "And I don't think you want to explain to the police why the head of the Geodal Syndicate was having dinner in a 5-star restaurant when it got shot up." Moon's blood went cold. She knew who he was. Kendra extended her hand. "So, do you want to stay here and die answering questions? Or do you want to leave with me and stay alive long enough to ask your own?" Moon looked at her hand, at the snowflake on her wrist, at the woman who had just dismantled a professional hit squad in heels and a cocktail dress without breaking a sweat. He took her hand. They ran. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. Kendra Butler stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 6:47 p.m. and practiced lying. "I work in logistics," she said to her reflection. Her voice sounded hollow. She tried again, softer this time, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Supply chain management, mostly. It's boring, honestly. What about you? The woman in the mirror looked unconvinced. She'd been out of the game for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Long enough that her hands had stopped reaching for weapons that weren't there. Long enough that she could sleep through the night without waking up calculating exit routes. Long enough that when her friend Sarah had suggested a blind date, Kendra had said yes instead of no, instead of the truth, which was that people like her didn't get to have normal things like dates and relationships and Sunday brunch. People like her got to have secrets and scars and the kind of silence that filled a room. But Sarah didn't know that. Sarah knew Kendra as the quiet woman in 4B who worked from home and kept to herself and had never, not once, brought anyone back to her apartment. Sarah thought Kendra was lonely. Sarah was right, but not for the reasons she imagined. So Kendra had said yes, and now she was standing in a red silk dress she'd bought specifically because it made her feel like someone else, someone soft and uncomplicated. And she was rehearsing lines like an actress preparing for a role she'd never auditioned for. "I like hiking," she told the mirror. That was true. She did like hiking. Hiking was good for maintaining cardiovascular endurance and situational awareness. She didn't mention that part. Her phone buzzed. "Sarah. He's gorgeous. Like, stupid gorgeous. And successful. You're going to love him. Have fun. Be yourself." Kendra looked at the tattoo on her wrist. The geometric snowflake. She'd tried to have it removed once 4 years ago. The artist had taken one look at the ink and the way it was embedded in the scar tissue beneath, and told her it would take multiple sessions and leave worse scarring. So she'd learned to hide it instead. Long sleeves, bracelets, careful angles. Tonight she wore neither. Tonight she told herself it was just a tattoo. People got tattoos. Normal people. People who worked in logistics and liked hiking and went on blind dates. She grabbed her clutch, checked the contents out of habit keys, phone, credit card, lipstick, and the small, folding knife she told herself she didn't need, but couldn't leave behind, and walked out the door. "Be yourself," Sarah had said. Kendra hadn't been herself in 7 years. Across the city, Bong Moon was having a similar conversation, except his was with 3 armed men in a parking garage. "I don't need you inside," Moon said for the 3rd time. His head of security, a man named Chen who had the build of a tank and the personality of a watchdog, looked physically pained. "Sir, with respect, that's not protocol." "Protocol is what I say it is." Moon adjusted his tie in the side mirror of the black Mercedes. The knot was perfect. His suit was perfect. His hair was perfect. Everything about Bong Moon's appearance was designed to project control, power, wealth. Everything except the fact that he was about to walk into a restaurant alone, unarmed, to have dinner with a woman whose last name he didn't know. "If something happens," Chen started. "Nothing is going to happen," Moon interrupted. "It's a date. At a public restaurant, with a woman who works in logistics." He said the last part like he was trying to convince himself. "I'm allowed to have one night where I'm not looking over my shoulder." Chen didn't look convinced. Moon didn't blame him. In their world, letting your guard down was how you ended up in the kind of conversation that ended with shallow graves and closed caskets. But Moon was tired. Tired of the paranoia. Tired of the performance. Tired of being Bong Moon, the head of Geodol, the man whose name made other men nervous. He wanted, just for a few hours, to be the person he might have been if his father hadn't died and left him an empire built on fear and blood. He wanted to be someone who went on dates. "Stay in the garage," Moon said. It wasn't a request. "If I need you, I'll call." Chen's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Moon's men knew better than to argue once the decision was made. Moon walked into Obsidian at 7:28 p.m. The restaurant was everything the reviews promised. Dim lighting, excessive candles, the kind of hushed atmosphere where even the silverware seemed expensive. The matron led him to booth 4, tucked in the corner with a view of the city lights through floor-to-ceiling windows. She was already there. Moon saw her and forgot, for just a second, how to be the man who never showed surprise. She was beautiful, not in the polished, deliberate way of the women who usually orbited his world, the ones who knew exactly who he was and what he could offer. This was different, natural, She wore a red dress that looked like it cost less than his watch, but somehow made the rest of the room look cheap. Her hair was pulled back, loose curls framing a face that was watching him with the kind of nervous smile people wore when they were trying very hard to make a good first impression. "Kendra?" Moon said, because he'd practiced that too. Practiced sounding casual and warm instead of calculating. "Bong?" She stood, and he noticed she was tall, nearly his height in heels. Her handshake was firm, professional, the kind of handshake that lasted exactly 3 seconds and communicated confidence without aggression. He'd shaken hands with warlords who couldn't manage that. They sat. The waiter appeared, recited specials in a tone that suggested the prices were optional for people like them, and vanished with their drink orders. Silence stretched between them. Kendra broke it first. "Sarah told me you're an import-export?" "She told me you work in logistics," Moon replied. They looked at each other. Both smiled. Both knew the other was lying about something, even if neither knew what. "So," Kendra said, folding her hands on the table. Moon noticed she kept her right wrist angled away, toward her body. "Import-export. That's deliberately vague." "Logistics," Moon countered. "Also vague." She laughed. It was a good laugh. Genuine. The kind that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. "Okay, fair. Let's try again. What do you do when you're not being deliberately vague about your job?" Moon considered the question. What did he do? He ran an organization that moved money and influence through the city like blood through a body. He negotiated with people who settled disagreements with violence. He made decisions that kept hundreds employed and dozens terrified. He went to sleep counting enemies instead of sheep. "I read," he said instead. "Mostly history, military strategy. You?" "I hike," Kendra said. "And I cook. Badly. My last attempt at risotto turned into something else. Porridge? Cement." They both smiled again. The waiter returned with wine. They ordered food neither of them would remember later. The conversation found a rhythm. Not smooth, but not painful. The rhythm of two people who were both trying to be someone else and occasionally forgetting to keep their guard up. Moon found himself relaxing. Actually relaxing. He told her about a book he'd read. She told him about a trail she'd hiked where she'd gotten lost for 6 hours. He didn't mention that getting lost was usually fatal in his line of work. She didn't mention that she'd been lost on purpose, checking sightlines and escape routes for a job she'd been planning at the time. They were good at this. Both of them. The performance of normalcy. 45 minutes in, Moon realized he was having a good time. Not performing having a good time. Actually enjoying himself. The woman across from him was smart and funny, and when she talked about the things she cared about, her whole face changed, became brighter, more present. He was leaning forward to ask her another question, something about her favorite place she'd ever traveled, when the window exploded. The world became glass and sound. Moon's body reacted before his brain caught up, instincts honed by a lifetime of staying alive in situations designed to kill him. He was moving, reaching across the table to grab Kendra, to pull her down, to shield her with his body because that's what you did when violence came through the window and found you unprepared. But Kendra was already moving. He saw it happen in the strange, slow-motion clarity that fear produces. Saw her left hand catch the edge of the table. Saw her right hand brace against the booth. Saw the table flip up and toward the window with the kind of controlled force that shouldn't have been possible from a woman in heels and a cocktail dress. Moon hit the floor behind the table. He hadn't jumped. He'd been pulled. Kendra was beside him, one hand on his chest pressing him flat, her body angled toward the gunfire in a posture Moon recognized, because he'd seen it before in training yards and back alleys, and the places where people learn to treat violence like a language. The gunfire was deafening. Bullets punched through the mahogany above their heads. Moon's ears were ringing. His brain was trying to process what was happening. Assassination attempt. Professional. Multiple shooters. He needed a weapon. He needed his men. He looked at Kendra. She wasn't scared. That was the first thing his brain managed to grab onto. She should have been terrified. She should have been screaming or crying or frozen in shock. Instead, she was calm, terrifyingly calm. Her breathing was steady. Her eyes were tracking movement he couldn't see. And then, he saw her wrist, the tattoo. The table had shifted when she'd flipped it, and now her right arm was extended, braced against the wood, and the candlelight that somehow hadn't gone out was catching the black ink against her skin. A snowflake. Geometric. Precise. Unmistakable. Moon's blood turned to ice. No, it wasn't possible. The silencers were gone. Disbanded. Destroyed. His father had made sure of that before. The gunfire stopped. Kendra was up and over the table before Moon could stop her. He saw her close the distance to the nearest gunman, saw the rifle fall, saw the man crumple. He didn't see how it happened. It was too fast, too efficient, like watching a video with frames missing. She was back behind the table 2 seconds later. Her dress was torn at the thigh, blood on her shoulder. She was breathing steady. She picked up her wine glass, took a sip. Moon stared at her. At this woman who had spent 45 minutes pretending to be normal and had just dismantled a professional hit squad like it was muscle memory. "We need to leave," Kendra said. Her voice was different now. Still calm but harder. Flat. The voice of someone giving orders, not making suggestions. Moon found his own voice. "Who are you?" "Later. Right now we run." She grabbed his hand, pulled him up. They were moving through the restaurant, past the sobbing patrons and the shattered glass and the chef who was calling the police. Kendra moved like she could see the future 3 steps ahead. Turn here. Avoid the kitchen. Through the service corridor. Down the stairs. The parking garage. Chen and his men were already dead. Moon saw them first. Saw the blood. Saw the bodies arranged like a message. 3 men who had survived wars and gang disputes, and a dozen attempts on Moon's life, taken out while he'd been upstairs drinking wine and pretending to be someone else. Kendra saw them second. Her grip on Moon's hand tightened, but she didn't stop moving. Didn't slow down. "Your car," she said. "Where?" Moon pointed to the Mercedes. The driver's side window was shattered. The driver, a kid named Yoon who had a daughter in elementary school, was slumped over the wheel. "Keys," Kendra said. "He has them." She was already moving. Opened the door. Checked Yoon's pulse with 2 fingers against his neck. Nothing. She grabbed the keys from his pocket, pulled him gently from the seat, and slid behind the wheel in one fluid motion. "Get in," she said. Moon stood frozen. His men were dead. Chen, who had been worried about protocol. Yoon, who had shown him pictures of his daughter's dance recital last week. All of them gone. Because Moon had wanted one night to pretend he was normal. "Moon," Kendra's voice cut through the shock. "Get in the car now or die here later. Choose." He got in the car. Kendra's hands moved across the steering wheel and dashboard like she'd driven this exact Mercedes 1,000 times. Found the ignition, started the engine, shifted into gear. The tires screamed. Moon barely got his seatbelt on before Kendra whipped the car around a concrete pillar at a speed that made the chassis complain. She downshifted, accelerated, handbrake turned through the exit ramp in a maneuver that should have flipped them but somehow didn't. They hit street level doing 60. A black SUV pulled out behind them. Moon saw it in the side mirror. "We have company." "I know." Kendra's eyes flicked to the rear view, then back to the road. She was running calculations. He could see it happening behind her eyes. Speed, distance, opportunity. She yanked the wheel left. The Mercedes jumped the median, cut through oncoming traffic, and threaded between a taxi and a bus with maybe 6 inches of clearance on either side. The SUV tried to follow, clipped the taxi, spun out. A final shot from the SUV punched through the windshield, spiderwebbing the glass. Kendra didn't flinch. Kendra didn't slow down. She was driving like the city was a course she'd memorized, taking turns Moon didn't see coming, using alleys and side streets and gaps in traffic that appeared for half a second and then vanished. "Where did you learn to drive like this?" Moon's voice came out hoarse. "Logistics," Kendra said. Her tone was flat. The joke wasn't funny anymore. Moon reached into his jacket, found the pistol he'd told himself he didn't need to bring. pulled it out and aimed it at her head. Pull over. Kendra glanced at the gun, glanced back at the road. No. I said pull over. I want answers. Now. And I want not to die tonight, Kendra replied. So unless you plan to shoot me while I'm driving 70 miles an hour through downtown traffic, put the gun down and ask your questions like an adult. Moon's hand didn't shake. He'd held guns on people before. Hundreds of times. It was part of the job. But something about this moment felt different. Felt wrong. I know that mark, he said. The tattoo on your wrist. I know what it means. Do you? Kendra took another turn. The gun tracked with her movement, but Moon noticed his finger wasn't on the trigger. Noticed he hadn't actually committed to the threat. My father told me about the silencers before he died, Moon said. Told me they were ghosts. Told me to fear that symbol more than anything else in the world. Told me Kendra's right hand came off the wheel. Moon didn't see the movement. Didn't process it. 1 second he was holding a gun on her. The next second the gun was in her hand. The magazine was ejected. The round was cleared from the chamber. And all of it was happening while she kept her eyes on the road and her left hand steady on the wheel. She handed the empty pistol back to him. I'm going to say this once, Kendra said. Her voice was quiet, dangerous. I am trying very hard not to be the person I used to be. I came to that restaurant tonight because I wanted to have a normal date with a normal man and pretend, just for a few hours, that I was someone who got to have nice things. And now people are dead and we're being hunted and you're pointing guns at me like I'm the threat. She took a breath. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to drive us somewhere safe. You're going to sit there and not do anything stupid. And when we get there, when we're not running for our lives, I will answer your questions. But right now, Moon, I need you to trust me. Moon looked at the empty gun in his hand, looked at the woman beside him who had disarmed him in 2 seconds while maintaining perfect control of a vehicle at high speed. I don't even know your real name, he said. Yes, Kendra replied. You do. She took another turn. The city blurred past. Moon checked the mirrors. No pursuers. No SUVs. Nothing but empty road and the sound of the engine and the woman beside him who had just saved his life twice and might be the most dangerous person he'd ever met. Where are we going? Moon asked. You have a safe house, don't you? Men like you always have safe houses. Moon did. 3 of them. How do you... I'm very good at logistics, Kendra said. Give me an address. He did. The closest one. An apartment in the warehouse district registered under a shell company. Clean, secure, stocked with weapons and cash and everything he'd need if his world ever collapsed. Which, apparently, it just had. Kendra drove. Moon sat in silence and tried to reconcile the woman who had laughed about cement risotto with the woman who had just cleared a pistol without looking. Tried to understand how both could exist in the same body. They arrived at the safe house 20 minutes later. The building looked abandoned from the outside, which was the point. Kendra parked in the loading bay, killed the engine. Silence filled the car. Thank you, Moon said. He didn't know why he said it. Didn't know what he was thanking her for saving his life, for not being what he feared she was, for being exactly what he feared she was. Kendra looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time since the restaurant exploded, she let him see something other than the professional mask. She looked tired, sad, human. I didn't want this, she said quietly. Neither did I. They got out of the car. Moon led her to the service entrance, punched in the code. The door opened on darkness. He found the light switch. The apartment was exactly as he'd left it. 1 room. Minimal furniture. A duffel bag in the closet with cash and passports. A locked cabinet with weapons. Windows covered with blackout curtains. Kendra walked the perimeter. Checked sightlines. Tested the locks. Moon watched her move and saw the truth of what she was. Not a logistics manager. Not a woman who liked hiking and bad cooking. A professional. She finished her inspection. Turned to face him. Opened her mouth to say something. The window exploded inward. Not glass this time. A canister. It hit the floor and started spewing smoke. "Down!" Kendra shouted. Moon dropped. The room filled with gray. His eyes burned. His lungs burned. He couldn't see, couldn't breathe. He felt Kendra's hand on his arm, pulling him. They were moving, crawling. The door. Had to reach the door. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes in the smoke. Moon couldn't tell where they were coming from. Couldn't tell how many shooters. Everything was chaos and burning and the certainty that he was about to die. Then Kendra let go of his arm. Moon heard it happen in the dark. Heard the impact of bodies. Heard the wet crack of bone breaking. Heard a scream cut short. Heard a gun clatter to the floor. Silence. The smoke started to clear. Moon pulled himself up. Blinked through the tears. Saw Kendra standing in the center of the room. 3 men on the floor around her. Not moving. She had a pistol in her hand, one of theirs, Moon realized. Not hers. The shoulder wound from the restaurant was bleeding freely now, a dark stain spreading across the torn red silk. She wasn't breathing hard. "We need to leave," she said. Same flat tone, same professional distance. Moon looked at the bodies, looked at her. "You killed them." "Yes. You didn't have a weapon." "I did after the first one." Kendra walked to the closet, grabbed the duffel bag Moon kept there, checked the contents. "How much cash is this?" 50,000. "Kendra, you just killed 3 men who were trying to kill us." "I know. I was there." She tossed him the bag. "We need to go. This place is compromised. Anywhere else?" Moon's brain was struggling to catch up. "You're bleeding." She glanced at her shoulder. The wound from the restaurant had reopened. Blood was soaking through the red silk. "It's fine." "It's not fine." "It's fine compared to being dead." She moved to the weapons cabinet. "Code?" Moon gave it to her. She opened it, grabbed 2 pistols and extra magazines, handed one to Moon. "Check it." He checked it. Loaded. Safety off. Ready. "Good," Kendra said. "Now where's your second safe house?" Moon told her. She nodded. They moved to the door, down the stairs, back to the car. The street outside was empty. Too empty. Moon's instinct screamed trap. "Wait," he said. Kendra had already stopped. She was looking at something he couldn't see, reading the street the way he read people. 3 o'clock, she whispered. "Rooftop. Sniper. How do you—" Glint. Scope catching streetlight. She was already moving, pulling him back into the stairwell. "We can't use the car. They're probably waiting for that. So what do we do?" Kendra looked at him. In the dim light of the stairwell, covered in blood and smoke residue, still wearing the torn red dress, she looked like something from a nightmare, or a legend. "We do what I used to do," she said. "We disappear." She led him through the building, through maintenance corridors and basement levels Moon didn't know existed, out through a sewer access, up through a different street 3 blocks away, moving like a ghost through a city that thought it knew all its hiding places. Moon followed. He didn't have a choice. His world had imploded. His men were dead. His safe house was compromised. Everything he'd built, all the control and power and careful positioning, had evaporated in the span of 2 hours. All he had left was the woman in the red dress who moved through darkness like she was born to it, and the growing certainty that she was going to get him killed, or save his life. He couldn't tell which yet. They ended up in the subway, not riding it, hiding in it. There was a maintenance tunnel 3 stops down from the warehouse district, accessible through a service door. Kendra opened with a lockpick she produced from somewhere Moon didn't want to think about. The tunnel was dark and smelled like rust and electric burn, but it was empty and forgotten, and exactly the kind of place people stopped looking after the first 5 minutes. Kendra found an alcove 20 meters in, behind a junction box that hummed with current. She sat down against the concrete wall like it was a chair at a restaurant. Moon sat across from her, his back against the opposite wall, the duffel bag between them. Silence settled. Not comfortable, not tense, just the exhausted quiet of 2 people who had run out of adrenaline and were left with reality. Moon pulled out his phone. No signal this deep, but he had satellite backup for emergencies. This qualified. He sent encrypted messages to his remaining network. called in favors, asked questions, waited for answers that came back in fragments over the next 40 minutes. Kendra watched him work. Didn't interrupt. Didn't ask. Just sat there in her ruined red dress, blood drying on her shoulder, looking like she could sit there forever if she needed to. The answers came. Moon read them twice to make sure he understood. Then he looked up at Kendra. "It wasn't for me," he said. "What wasn't?" "The hit, the restaurant, the safe house, all of it." He turned the phone so she could see the screen. "I have sources in the mercenary networks. People who owe me information. I just asked who ordered the contract tonight." Kendra's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes went very still. "They're not after Geodal," Moon continued. "They're not after me. The contract is for someone called Ghost 7. Does that mean anything to you?" Silence. Kendra. She closed her eyes, took a breath. When she opened them again, she looked different. Smaller, somehow. More human. "That was my designation," she said quietly. "When I worked for the Silencers. We didn't use names on operations. Just numbers. I was 7. Moon felt something cold settle in his chest. "The target tonight was you." "Yes. I was just collateral damage. Wrong place. Wrong time." Kendra's voice was flat. Empty. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought I was careful. Thought I'd erased everything when I left. Thought I could just stop." She looked down at her hands, at the tattoo on her wrist. "Guess I was wrong." Moon should have been angry. Should have been furious. His men were dead because of her. Chen and Yoon and the others had died protecting him from a threat that wasn't even meant for him. They'd died as footnotes in someone else's story. But looking at Kendra now, seeing the way her shoulders curved inward, seeing the exhaustion and grief written across her face, he couldn't find the anger, couldn't locate the rage that should have been simple and clean. "How long have you been out?" Moon asked. 3 years, 2 months, 16 days. She said it like she'd been counting, like every day away from that life was a victory she had to measure. She'd been 24 when she walked away. Now she was 27 and still counting. "Why did you leave?" Kendra was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I was good at it. Too good. And I looked at my life and realized the only thing I knew how to do was make people disappear. The only relationships I had were with people I worked with. The only time I felt anything was when I was on a job." She looked up at him. "I was 24 years old and I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed. Really laughed. The kind that hurts your stomach. So you retired." "So I tried to become a person." Kendra's laugh was bitter. "Got an apartment. Got a normal job. Made a friend who doesn't know what I used to be. And when she suggested a blind date, I thought." She trailed off. "You thought you could have something normal," Moon finished. "Yeah." Kendra wiped at her eyes. She wasn't crying, but she looked like she wanted to. "Stupid, right? People like me don't get happy endings. We get what we deserve." Moon thought about that. About deserving. About the things he'd done to build his empire. The decisions he'd made that kept him awake at night. The blood on his own hands that no amount of expensive suits could hide. "I don't think that's true," he said. Kendra looked at him. "You don't know what I've done. You're right. I don't." Moon shifted, winced. His ribs hurt from where he'd hit the floor at the safe house. "But I know you came to a restaurant tonight because you were lonely. I know you tried to protect me even when you realized the bullets were meant for you. I know you could have left me in that parking garage. Could have disappeared and let me figure out my own survival, but you didn't. That doesn't erase. I'm not saying it erases anything." Moon's voice was gentle. "I'm saying maybe we're more than the worst things we've done." Kendra stared at him. The tunnel hummed around them. Somewhere in the distance, a train passed, the vibration rattling through the walls. "Your father," she said suddenly. "You said you knew the tattoo because of your father." Moon went very still. "The Silencers," he said carefully. "My father told me they killed him. Or tried to. He died afraid of that symbol. Died telling me to watch for it, to never trust anyone who carried that mark." "When did he die?" 7 years ago. Heart attack. But before he died, there was an attempt on his life. Someone broke into our home. My father survived, but he was never the same after. Paranoid, terrified. He saw that tattoo on the assassin before they fled. Moon's hands clenched. He spent his last year looking over his shoulder, waiting for the silencers to come back and finish the job. Kendra closed her eyes. What? Moon asked. I was there, she said quietly. The world tilted. What? 7 years ago. Your father. I was there. Kendra opened her eyes. They were bright with something that might have been tears or might have been memory. But I wasn't sent to kill him. I was sent to save him. Moon couldn't breathe. There was a contract on your father, Kendra continued. Rival syndicate. They hired a cleaner named Viktor Sokolov. Expensive. Efficient. My people got wind of it, and we were hired by a different faction, one that wanted your father alive. I was given 48 hours to intercept Viktor before he reached your father. She looked at her wrist, at the tattoo. I failed. I was 20 years old, and I'd never failed a mission before, but Viktor was better than me. Faster. He got to your father's house first. I arrived 6 minutes late. Her voice cracked. 6 minutes. I came through the window. Saw Viktor standing over your father with a knife. I fired. Missed. Viktor ran. I should have chased him. Should have finished it. But I stopped to check on your father. Moon couldn't speak. Couldn't process what he was hearing. He was alive, Kendra whispered. Shaken. Terrified. I told him to run. Told him to disappear. But he saw my tattoo. Saw the mark. And when the authorities arrived, when they asked him what happened, he told them a silencer tried to kill him. She wiped at her eyes. He didn't know. Couldn't have known. I couldn't exactly explain that I was trying to help him. So I let him believe what he believed. Let the legend grow. And I carried that failure with me every day since. The tattoo, Moon said. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. Distant. You said it's a mark of your greatest failure. Yes. Moon looked at the woman across from him, the woman his father had feared, the woman he'd grown up hating without ever knowing her name, the woman who had tried to save his father's life and had been punished with blame for trying to end it. You tried to help him, Moon said slowly. I failed him. You were 20 years old and you tried. Moon leaned forward. Kendra, you tried to save my father. That's more than... He stopped, took a breath. I've spent 7 years believing the silencers killed him. Spent 7 years making decisions based on that fear. Building walls, trusting no one. And you were never the enemy. I might as well have been, Kendra said. If I'd been faster. If you'd been faster, my father might have lived a little longer before his heart gave out. Moon's voice was gentle. He died of a heart attack, Kendra, not an assassination. Not Viktor coming back. His own body failed him. And maybe it failed him because of the fear, but that's not your fault. Kendra looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time since the restaurant exploded, she looked like she believed him. I'm sorry, she said, for what he went through, for what you went through. I'm sorry too, Moon replied, for what you've carried. They sat in silence. The tunnel hummed. Moon's phone buzzed with another message, but he ignored it. Right now, in this moment, there was nothing more important than the woman sitting across from him who had tried to save his father and had spent 7 years punishing herself for failing. Kendra shifted, winced. Her shoulder was still bleeding. Let me look at that, Moon said. It's fine. It's not fine. You're bleeding through your dress. He moved closer, pulled the duffel bag between them. There was a first aid kit inside. There was always a first aid kit in his emergency supplies. Kendra let him work. Let him clean the wound with antiseptic that made her hiss through her teeth but not pull away. Let him apply pressure to stop the bleeding. Let him bandage it with the careful precision of someone who had done this before, had patched up wounded men in situations where hospitals weren't an option. You're good at this, Kendra said. I've had practice. Moon secured the bandage. That should hold, but you need actual medical attention. Later. Kendra was looking at him now, her face inches from his. Moon, I need to tell you something. What? I came out of hiding for that date because I was lonely, she said. But that's not the whole truth. I came because I was tired of being afraid, tired of running from who I used to be, tired of living half a life. She took a breath, and then the restaurant happened, and I thought, this is it. This is the universe telling me I don't get to have normal things. I don't get to have connection. Kendra. But you're still here, she continued. You've seen what I am. You know what I've done. And you're still here. Moon held her gaze. So are you. Something shifted between them. The air in the tunnel felt heavier, charged. I should have let you walk away, Kendra said. Should have disappeared the second I realized the hit was on me. But I didn't want to. Didn't want to lose the one person who's looked at me like I'm human in 3 years. You are human, Moon said. I'm a killer who tried to have dinner with a mob boss and got people killed. I'm a mob boss who brought violence to a woman trying to leave violence behind. Moon's voice was quiet. We're both carrying things we can't put down. But maybe that means we understand each other. Kendra's hand moved, touched his face. Her fingers were gentle despite the calluses, despite the blood under her nails. What are we doing? She whispered. I don't know, Moon admitted. But I don't want to stop. She leaned in. He met her halfway. The kiss was soft and desperate and tasted like smoke and copper and the kind of honesty that only exists when you've run out of places to hide. When they broke apart, Kendra was smiling. Actually smiling. The kind that reached her eyes. We should probably not die tonight, she said. Probably. Moon smiled back. What do you suggest? Kendra's expression changed. Hardened. The professional mask sliding back into place, but different now. Not hiding. Choosing. I'm tired of running, she said. I spent 3 years running from who I was. Spent tonight running from people who won't stop until I'm dead. I'm done. What are you saying? I'm saying we stop running. Kendra stood, held out her hand. I'm saying we turn around and finish this. Moon took her hand. Let her pull him up. You want to go after them. I want to end this. Tonight. So that tomorrow, if we're still alive, we can finish our date. She said it like a promise. Like a dare. Moon thought about it. About the smart play, which was to disappear, to use his resources to vanish until the heat died down. About the safe play. But Safe had gotten his men killed. Safe had left him in a subway tunnel with a woman who had saved his life 3 times and was looking at him like he was worth saving again. Okay, Moon said. How? Kendra smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had spent 7 years suppressing their nature and had just decided to stop. We give them what they want, she said. We give them Ghost 7. The plan was simple, which Moon knew from experience meant it was probably suicidal. Kendra made 3 phone calls. The first was to a number Moon didn't recognize, a conversation held in a language he didn't speak. The second was to a message service, leaving coordinates and a time. The third was to the mercenary network itself, using a contact she'd maintained from her old life. This is Ghost 7, she'd said, her voice cold and professional. I'm told you're looking for me. Let's save everyone some time. Pier 19. The old shipping yards. 1 hour. Come alone or don't come at all. She'd hung up before they could respond. They won't come alone, Moon said. I'm counting on it. They took a taxi to the docks. Kendra had changed. Moon's emergency duffel had contained clothes meant for him. But she made them work, rolling up sleeves and pant legs, tying the excess shirt fabric at her waist. She looked ridiculous and dangerous in equal measure. Moon had armed himself from the weapons cache. 2 pistols, knife, everything he'd need if this went wrong. When they arrived at Pier 19, the shipping yard was exactly as abandoned as Kendra had promised. Containers stacked like a maze, rust and darkness, and the smell of salt water, the perfect place for a trap. This is insane, Moon said. Probably. Kendra checked her weapon. You don't have to stay. Yes, I do. She looked at him. Why? Because you came to a restaurant tonight looking for connection and found me instead. Because I'm tired of being alone, too. Because... Moon stopped. Started again. Because I think you're worth fighting for. Kendra's expression softened. I think you might be crazy. I run a criminal empire. Crazy is a job requirement. Moon smiled. Where do you want me? She told him, positioned him in a container with sightlines on the approach, gave him explicit instructions to stay hidden unless everything went wrong. And if everything goes wrong? Moon asked. Then shoot anything that moves and isn't me. Kendra checked her watch. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Get in position. Moon moved to the container, found his spot, watched Kendra walk into the center of the shipping yard, standing under a floodlight like she was waiting for a bus, not an execution squad. She looked small from this distance, alone, but Moon had seen what she could do, had watched her move through violence like it was choreography she'd memorized. The mercenaries arrived in 3 vehicles. Moon counted them as they emerged. 12 men. Professional gear. Military precision. They spread out, surrounding Kendra's position. She didn't move, didn't flinch. The leader stepped forward. Moon couldn't hear what he said, but he saw Kendra's response, saw her shake her head, saw the leader raise his weapon. That's when Kendra moved. She was fast, faster than Moon remembered. She closed the distance to the nearest mercenary before he could track her, disarmed him, used his body as a shield against the gunfire that erupted from all sides. Then she was gone, vanished into the container maze like smoke. The mercenaries pursued. Moon watched them move, watched their discipline, their training. They were good, but Kendra was better. Moon saw her twice, once as a shadow on a container roof, moving silent and lethal, once as a shape in the darkness between stacks, and both times men fell without making a sound. He counted 2 down before she vanished again, then a third. But 12 was too many, even for her. Moon saw it happening, saw the net closing, saw Kendra getting cornered near the water's edge. He left his position, came up behind the nearest mercenary, put a bullet in his leg. The man went down screaming. The others turned. Moon was already moving, using the container maze the same way Kendra had, using his knowledge of tactical movement, of ambush and counter-ambush. He found Kendra pinned behind a container, 3 men advancing on her position. Moon took the first one from behind. The second turned and Moon shot him twice center mass. The third got his weapon up. Kendra came around the container and dropped him with a strike to the throat. They looked at each other. I thought I told you to stay hidden, Kendra said. You did. I didn't listen. Moon reloaded. How many left? 4. Maybe 5. Kendra was breathing hard now. Blood on her hands, not all of it hers. They're regrouping near the vehicles. Then we end it there. They moved together. Moon found himself matching her rhythm, her pace. Found the strange synchronicity of fighting beside someone who understood violence the same way he did. The remaining mercenaries had formed a defensive position near their vehicles. Smart. Disciplined. It would have worked against most threats. Kendra wasn't most threats. She used the darkness and the container stacks, drew their fire, made them waste ammunition, made them divide their attention. Moon came from the other side, caught them in crossfire. The fight was brutal and quick. Moon took 2 down. Kendra took the rest. When it was over, when the shooting stopped and the silence of the docks returned, they stood among the bodies and the wreckage. Is it done? Moon asked. Kendra pulled out her phone, made another call, listened, hung up. It's done. The contract's dead. The people who hired them decided it wasn't worth the cost. She looked at the carnage around them. Turns out Ghost 7 is more expensive to kill than they budgeted for. Moon laughed. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of the statement, the exhaustion, the adrenaline crash, it all came out as laughter that bordered on hysteria. Kendra joined him. They stood in a shipping yard full of bodies and laughed like lunatics. When they finally stopped, when they caught their breath, Moon checked his watch. 4:47 a.m. The sky was starting to lighten, dawn bleeding through the darkness. Come on, Moon said. I know a place. They walked out of the shipping yard, found Moon's ruined Mercedes where Kendra had parked it 3 blocks away. The windshield was shattered from the bullet during the chase. spider-webbed glass catching the dawn light. The passenger door was dented, but the engine still worked. Kendra drove. Moon didn't argue, just sat in the passenger seat and watched the city wake up around them. She pulled into a diner parking lot 15 minutes later, the kind of place that served breakfast 24 hours and didn't ask questions. The kind of place that had seen everything and been surprised by nothing. They sat in a booth by the window, Kendra still in Moon's oversized clothes, Moon still in his blood-spattered suit, both of them looking like they'd survived a war, which, Moon supposed, they had. The waitress brought coffee without being asked, didn't comment on their appearance, just poured 2 cups and walked away. Moon wrapped his hands around the mug, felt the warmth seep into his fingers. "Are you still retired?" he asked. Kendra looked at him, looked at her hands, at the tattoo on her wrist. "Yes," she said. Tonight was closure, not a return. Good. Moon took a sip of coffee. It was terrible. Best thing he'd ever tasted. "Are you still a mob boss?" Kendra asked. "Technically, though I might need to reevaluate my security protocols." Moon smiled. It felt strange on his face. Too honest. Too real. "My last team died because they were protecting me from the wrong threat. I'm sorry." "I know." Moon reached across the table, took her hand. "But that's not your fault. It's the cost of the life I chose." Kendra's fingers intertwined with his. "So what do we do now?" Moon thought about it. About the restaurant where their date had exploded into violence. About the plan they'd made to have a normal evening. "I think," he said slowly, "we finish our date." Kendra laughed. "This is finishing our date." "No, this is surviving our date. Finishing it means we order food, talk about normal things, pretend for a few hours that we're not who we are. I thought we just agreed we can't pretend anymore." "We can't pretend we're normal," Moon corrected. "But we can choose to have a normal moment. One meal, one conversation where nobody shoots at us." Kendra considered this. "And after breakfast?" "I don't know," Moon admitted. "I've never dated someone who could kill me in my sleep. I've never dated someone who runs a criminal empire." Kendra smiled. "Guess we'll figure it out as we go." The waitress returned. They ordered eggs and toast and the kind of food that tasted better after violence, after survival. They talked. Not about the attack or the bodies or the life they'd left in the shipping yard. They talked about small things, movies they'd seen, books they'd read, the kind of conversation they'd started at Obsidian before the world interrupted. The sun came up. Light flooded through the diner windows. Moon looked at Kendra in the daylight, seeing her clearly for the first time. Seeing the woman who had tried to save his father. The woman who had saved him. The woman who was looking back at him like he was worth the effort. "I want to see you again," Moon said. "After this, after we've slept and healed and figured out the mess we're in, I want a second date." Kendra raised an eyebrow. "You sure? First date nearly got us killed. Second date can't possibly be worse. That's tempting fate." "I run a criminal empire," Moon said. "Tempting fate is a job requirement." Kendra laughed. The real laugh. The kind that hurt her stomach. The kind she'd told him she couldn't remember having. "Okay," she said. "Second date, but somewhere quiet. No windows. Definitely no crystal chandeliers. Deal." They finished their breakfast, paid the check, walked out into the morning. The city was waking up around them. People going to work, living their normal lives, not knowing that somewhere in the night, 2 people had fought and survived and chosen each other despite every reason not to. Moon's phone buzzed. Messages from what was left of his organization. Questions he'd have to answer. Decisions he'd have to make. But not now. Not yet. Right now, he was standing in a diner parking lot with a woman in borrowed clothes who had killed a dozen men to protect what they might become. "I'll call you," Moon said. "You better." Kendra reached up, kissed him, soft and quick and filled with promise. Then she walked to the ruined Mercedes. Got in. Drove away. Moon watched her go. Pulled out his phone. Started making the calls he needed to make. Started rebuilding what had been destroyed. But he was smiling. Because for the first time in 7 years, since his father had died afraid and alone, Moon had found something worth more than power or control or safety. He'd found someone who understood what it meant to carry weight, to be dangerous and tired and looking for connection. He'd found Kendra. And somehow, impossibly, she'd found him too. Subscribe to see how this unfolds, and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Moon and Kendra's love can survive what's coming next? Because trust me, this is just the beginning. The next chapter drops soon, and you are not ready for what happens when the people hunting Kendra discover she's not alone anymore. Hit that like button if you're obsessed with this dangerous romance, and turn on notifications because things are about to get even more twisted. See you in the next one if they both survive what's waiting for them.